There was a man named Daniel. Daniel was never a bad person. In fact, he was admired by many. But his life had one problem. He cared too much about what people thought. Every decision he made was filtered through one question: what will people say? When he wanted to try something new, he stopped himself because he imagined the judgment. When he wanted to speak his truth, he stayed silent because he feared rejection, even when he had ideas. So he lived a life that looked acceptable, a life that made others comfortable. But deep down, he wasn't. Years passed. Daniel became someone everyone respected, but someone he didn't recognize. One day he sat alone and asked himself a question. If no one had an opinion about me, who would I be? And for the first time, he didn't have an answer. Because he had spent his whole life becoming who others wanted, he never became himself. And that was his real loss. The quiet realization that he had lived a life that was never truly his. Many of us are like Daniel. There was a time in my life when I lived just like him. I used to follow everyone's advice and what they thought was best for me. I followed my friends' opinions, which generated this pressure. When I was impacted by other people's thoughts, I was also influenced by my peers' negative opinions, which led to harmful behaviors and character traits. Not until I understood myself and began to live my life based on my own beliefs. To be honest, living under the opinions and thoughts of others is stressful and feels like a cage. And in this video, I will not only discuss how this can lead to unhealthy habits, but I will also go into other elements, so relax and enjoy this YouTube video. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. You must recognize that caring about other people's opinions can cause you to lose a part of yourself, and it also causes you to lack decision-making abilities. Every decision requires a second party, and you can never genuinely do things on your own. I recall when I was making simple decisions, such as my daily schedule, and I always relied on my friends, and I acquired a sense of dependency. I wasn't really myself. And this begins at a young age when we rely on the opinions of our parents and older siblings, and it continues into adulthood without our knowledge. We begin to have this invisible sensation of inadequacy when we do things that are aligned with us and always try to accomplish things that people expect of us. And this desire to do whatever people want of us rather than our own thing causes us to hold ourselves back because we are constantly striving to uphold the picture we believe others have of us. And then this leads to us overthinking things that aren't significant because, to be honest, people's opinions are rarely as important as we make them out to be. And when we place so much value on other people's opinions on our lives, we start to feel trapped. Many of us are under quiet pressure. Perhaps there is something you want to pursue, such as a career path, but it does not fit with the type of people your family and friends are, so they advise you against it. And because you value their opinion, you find yourself letting go of your own decisions. This adds strain because you never feel like yourself. You begin to live by an invisible set of rules and regulations that would not exist if you had chosen to do things your way. However, this pressure stems from doing what you believe is right rather than not doing what you enjoy. If you started a job because others told you to and it isn't something you actually enjoy, it gets stressful. If you are always making sure that all your activities are in line with what people think of you, you will begin to feel pressure to perform. And if you find yourself living this way, you should know that it isn't just you. Today, many individuals do things only to look good in front of others. It's what our society has become. The reason I talk about myself in my channel a lot is that most of the things I talk about, I can easily identify to them because they were once me, and I constantly recall other people's opinions. As I previously stated, peer pressure and the need to be cool are what drove me to develop poor habits. Most of the time, people that fall into negative habits that were never into it before do so because they want to feel a certain way at the same time, long to be accepted by others, and that is how they perceive society. We all have various perspectives. Some people believe that if they don't do things like neglecting their health through bad habits and following a path that's not theirs, they will never be accepted. We are all influenced by someone else's opinions, whether they are positive or negative. Anyway, it's good to avoid the harmful stuff, but you should be mindful of everything. You should be mindful of your thoughts, and when you feel compelled to follow in the footsteps of others. There's something Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, Envy is ignorance. Imitation is suicide. Think about that. The moment you start living based on other people's opinions, trying to copy their life, trying to meet their expectations, you slowly lose yourself because you're no longer living your life. You're living a version of someone else's. Even though I've said it before, one thing I'd want to underline is how we overlook our own desires and objectives because we're so concerned with what others think. And I see a lot of people doing this. You should never rely on the picture you believe others have of you, but rather on what you think of yourself. You should never follow someone else's path, and you should never be afraid to pursue your own. If you continue to do what you believe is correct, based on other people's opinions rather than your own, you will eventually realize you were never living for yourself. Everyone has a varied past and life experiences, which leads to diverse viewpoints. What one person decides in a given situation is unlikely to be the same as another person's decision. So, why do we always do what others advise us to do? And why are we swayed by their opinions? You have a particular past and experience, and your decisions should reflect this. So don't feel strange if you have a different perspective and decision than others. No one has the same aspirations and past experiences as you. So do what seems right for you, not for others. Live your life for yourself. As I've already stated, other people's opinions are unimportant to you. You don't need everyone's approval. You need direction. And the moment you start trusting your own decisions, other people's opinions lose their power. Today's task will be a bit tricky. What can you do every day to stop relying on people's opinions? And if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.